Number 20. Wake Island, the forgotten World War was stew. Battleground. Wake Island sits 2,300 miles west of Hawaii, in the middle of absolutely nowhere in the Pacific Ocean. Most Americans have never heard of it, yet the US has controlled this tiny atoll since 1899. The island is so remote that it doesn't appear on most world maps, just a speck in the vast Pacific. Wake became strategically important during World War II when Japan attacked it just hours after Pearl Harbor. American forces held out for 15 days before surrendering in what became one of the war's early heroic stands. Today, Wake Island has no permanent civilian population, just a few dozen military and contractor personnel maintaining an airfield. The US keeps Wake for one reason. It's a strategic refueling point for military aircraft crossing the Pacific. Wake Island represents American determination to maintain military presence anywhere that might prove strategically valuable, no matter how remote or tiny. Number 19. Johnston Atoll, America's secret chemical weapons disposal site. Johnston Atoll lies 860 miles southwest of Hawaii, so isolated that even most military personnel don't know it exists. The US seized this coral atoll in 1858, and it remained relatively unknown until the Cold War. What happened on Johnston Atoll is the stuff of nightmares. The military used it as a nuclear weapons testing site in the 1960s, conducting high-altitude atmospheric nuclear tests. After nuclear testing ended, Johnston became America's primary chemical weapons disposal facility. From 1990 to 2000, the military incinerated thousands of tons of chemical weapons, including sarin gas, VX nerve agent, and mustard gas. The island was so contaminated that cleanup took years and cost billions. Today, Johnston Atoll is uninhabited and designated a wildlife refuge. The US keeps control because the contamination legacy requires ongoing monitoring. Number 18. Palmyra Atoll, the privately owned island America claims. Palmyra Atoll sits 1,000 miles south of Hawaii, so remote it appears on almost no maps. Here's where it gets weird. Palmyra is technically privately owned, but also under US government control. The Nature Conservancy owns most of the atoll, while the US government owns the rest. During World War II, the military built an airstrip and facilities to support Pacific operations. After the war, Palmyra was abandoned and became a legal oddity. The atoll has no permanent residents, just researchers studying pristine coral reef ecosystems. The US maintains control for strategic reasons. Palmyra could serve as a forward base if needed. The island also allows the US to claim exclusive economic zone rights over surrounding ocean, extending American control over vast areas of the Pacific. Number 17. Kingman Reef, America's submerged secret territory. Kingman Reef is so low-lying, it's barely above water at high tide, making it literally invisible on most maps. Located 930 miles south of Hawaii, Kingman is a triangular reef just 6 feet above sea level at its highest point. The reef has no land area suitable for habitation, no fresh water, and no vegetation beyond a few scrubby plants. So why does the US control it? Strategic positioning and fishing rights. Kingman Reef gives the US control over 410,000 square miles of ocean territory around it. The exclusive economic zone around this barely above water reef contains valuable fishing grounds and potential mineral resources. The US annexed Kingman in 1922 and has maintained a claim ever since. American control prevents other nations from using it as a base or claiming the surrounding waters. Number 16. Midway Atoll, where World War Citrus turned and America never left. Midway Atoll sits 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii at the far end of the Hawaiian island chain. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 was the turning point of the Pacific War, where the US Navy destroyed 4 Japanese aircraft carriers and shifted the war's momentum. After that crucial battle, Midway became a symbol America refused to abandon. For decades, the US maintained a major naval air station on these tiny islands. When the base closed in 1993, the US didn't relinquish control. Instead, Midway became a wildlife refuge. Today, a few dozen Fish and Wildlife Service employees live on Midway. The U.S. keeps Midway for historical significance and strategic positioning. The atoll extends American territorial waters deep into the Pacific and provides a potential base location if tensions with China escalate. Number 15. Jarvis Island, the most remote U.S. territory. Nobody knows exists. Jarvis Island sits 1,400 miles south of Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific, with absolutely nothing around it for hundreds of miles in every direction. The island is completely uninhabited, just 1,000 acres of coral sand, scrub vegetation, and seabirds. The U.S. claimed Jarvis in 1858 for guano mining, when bird droppings were valuable as fertilizer. After the guano was exhausted, the island was abandoned. The U.S. re-established control in the 1930s, abandoned it again, then reclaimed it after World War II. Today, Jarvis has no human presence whatsoever. So why does America keep it? The exclusive economic zone. This tiny, worthless island gives the U.S. control over 200 nautical miles of ocean in all directions, encompassing over 410,000 square miles of sea. Number 14. Howland Island, Amelia Earhart's destination that America never abandoned. Howland Island achieved brief fame as Amelia Earhart's intended refueling stop when she disappeared in 1937. This tiny coral island, 1,600 miles southwest of Hawaii, was supposed to be her halfway point across the Pacific. She never made it, but the U.S. never left. Howland is just 1.6 square miles of coral and sand with no fresh water and no natural resources beyond its location. The U.S. maintains a claim because Howland extends American territorial waters and provides positioning in the Central Pacific. A few buildings from the 1930s colonization attempt still stand, slowly crumbling in the salt air. The island is now a wildlife refuge visited maybe once a year by scientists. Number 13. Baker Island, America's Pacific wasteland. Baker Island sits near Howland Island, equally remote and equally worthless as actual land. This 0.5 square mile patch of coral has no fresh water, barely any vegetation, and has been uninhabited for decades. The U.S. claimed Baker in 1857 for guano mining, exploited the bird droppings, and abandoned it. During World War II, the military briefly used it as a lookout post. Today, Baker Island is a wildlife refuge that nobody visits. The U.S. maintains sovereignty for the same reason as all these Pacific specks: ocean territory. Baker's exclusive economic zone extends American control over hundreds of thousands of square miles of Pacific Ocean. Number 12. Navassa Island, the Caribbean island, America. Stole and won't return. Navassa Island sits between Jamaica and Haiti in the Caribbean, and Haiti has been demanding it back for over a century. The U.S. claimed Navassa in 1858 under the Guano Islands Act, when phosphate-rich bird droppings were valuable. American companies mined the guano using essentially slave labor, leading to a revolt in 1889 where workers killed their supervisors. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of American sovereignty, and the U.S. has controlled Navassa ever since, despite having no legitimate claim beyond "we took it first." Haiti argues Navassa is historically and geographically Haitian, but the U.S. refuses to negotiate. Today, Navassa is uninhabited except for occasional Coast Guard visits. Number 11. Serenilla Bank, the submerged Caribbean territory you've never heard of. Serenilla Bank is a mostly submerged reef system in the Caribbean between Honduras and Jamaica. At high tide, the bank is almost completely underwater. The U.S. claims it under the Guano Islands Act despite it having no guano and barely qualifying as land. Colombia, Honduras, and Jamaica all dispute American control, but the U.S. Navy occasionally patrols the area to maintain the claim. Serenilla Bank has zero strategic value, no resources, and no land to speak of. The U.S. keeps it out of pure stubbornness and to maintain a legal precedent that even submerged reefs count as territory. Number 10. Bajo Nuevo Bank, the Caribbean reef America controls for no good reason. Bajo Nuevo Bank is another mostly underwater reef system in the Caribbean that the US claims despite having no practical use for it. The bank lies between Nicaragua and Jamaica, and both countries dispute American sovereignty. At low tide, a few rocks barely poke above the surface. There's no land to occupy, no resources to extract, and no strategic importance. The US maintains its claim purely to prevent other nations from having it. Bajo Nuevo represents the absurdity of American territorial claims. The government spends resources defending sovereignty over rocks that are underwater most of the time. Number 9. Kure Atoll, the northernmost coral atoll America refuses to share. Kure Atoll sits at the northwestern end of the Hawaiian island chain, the most remote part of the Hawaiian archipelago. The atoll is so isolated that it's barely on any maps of Hawaii. Kure has no permanent residents, just a rotating crew of wildlife refugee workers. The US maintains control because Kure is technically part of Hawaii, making it US territory by default. During the Cold War, Kure had a Coast Guard station monitoring Pacific traffic. Today, it's a pristine wildlife refuge where Hawaiian monk seals and seabirds breed without human interference. The US keeps Kure to maintain the full extent of Hawaiian waters. Number 8. Swains Island, the privately owned island that became US territory. Swains Island in American Samoa is one of the strangest territorial arrangements in US history. The Jennings family has owned Swains Island since the 1850s, and they still own it today while it's also US territory. The island has a population that varies between 5 and 20, all family members or employees. Swains produces copra from coconut palms, one of the last commercial operations on a privately owned Pacific island. The US acquired Swains as part of American Samoa in 1925, but the Jennings family retained ownership. This creates a bizarre situation where a family owns an entire island that's also US territory. Number 7. Rose Atoll, America's southernmost Pacific territory. Rose Atoll is the southernmost point of US territory in the Pacific, lying just 14 degrees south of the equator. The atoll is a tiny ring of coral surrounding a lagoon, with 2 small islands totaling just 0.05 square miles. Rose Atoll is completely uninhabited and has been designated a wildlife refuge. The atoll has no fresh water, minimal vegetation, and no reason for humans to be there. The US maintains control as part of American Samoa, extending territorial waters deep into the South Pacific. Rose Atoll gives the US a foothold in the Southern Pacific and extends exclusive economic zone rights over vast ocean areas. Number 6. Northern Mariana Islands, the strategic Pacific chain America won't release. The Northern Mariana Islands stretch from Guam north toward Japan, a chain of volcanic islands that most Americans couldn't locate on a map. These islands became US territory after World War II when America seized them from Japan. The islands have a complicated political status as a US Commonwealth with their own government, but under American sovereignty. The Northern Islands are mostly uninhabited and serve as military training areas. The US uses these islands for live-fire exercises, bombing practice, and amphibious assault training. The strategic value is enormous. The Northern Marianas put American military presence within striking distance of China and North Korea. Number 5. Guam, America's permanent aircraft carrier in the Pacific. Guam is the most strategically important US territory that most Americans forget exists. This 210 square mile island, 3,800 miles west of Hawaii, is America's westernmost territory and military stronghold. Guam hosts Andersen Air Force Base and Naval Base Guam, making it an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Western Pacific. B-52 bombers, nuclear submarines, and thousands of troops are permanently stationed on Guam. The island is within striking distance of North Korea, China, and the Philippines, making it essential to American military strategy. The indigenous Chamorro people have lived on Guam for 3,500 years, but they have no vote in Congress despite being US citizens. America maintains iron control over Guam because losing it would collapse the entire Pacific defense strategy. Number 4. Diego Garcia, the depopulated island America uses as a military base. Diego Garcia is technically British territory, but it's essentially an American military base. The island sits in the Indian Ocean, 1,000 miles south of India. In the 1960s, Britain forcibly removed the entire indigenous population to give the US a military base. Today, Diego Garcia hosts a massive American air and naval base with over 3,000 personnel. The island serves as a launching point for operations in the Middle East and Indian Ocean. B-2 stealth bombers deploy from Diego Garcia, and the island allegedly housed a CIA black site for terror suspects. The US controls Diego Garcia through an agreement with Britain that ignores the rights of the deported islanders. Number 3. Kwajalein Atoll, the Marshall Islands Missile Testing Range. Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands hosts one of America's most important missile testing facilities. The US Army maintains a base on Kwajalein, where ballistic missiles fired from California are tracked and intercepted. The lagoon serves as an impact zone for missile tests, and radar installations monitor everything happening in the sky above. The indigenous Marshallese people were displaced from Kwajalein to make room for the base, forced to live on overcrowded nearby islands while Americans occupy their ancestral land. The US pays rent to the Marshall Islands government for base rights, but locals see little benefit. Kwajalein represents American military priorities overriding indigenous rights. Number 2. Ascension Island, the mid-Atlantic air base nobody knows about. Ascension Island sits alone in the South Atlantic Ocean, 1,000 miles from any continent. This British territory hosts a crucial American airbase used for transporting personnel and equipment to the Middle East and Africa. The US has maintained a presence on Ascension since World War II, and the base became essential during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Planes refuel on Ascension during transatlantic flights, extending American power projection globally. The island also hosts intelligence-gathering facilities and communications systems. Very few Americans know Ascension exists, yet it's critical to military logistics. The US maintains its presence through agreement with Britain. Number 1. The future. Arctic islands, America will fight to control. The most important secret islands are the ones America doesn't control yet, but will fight for as climate change makes them accessible. As Arctic ice melts, previously useless frozen rocks are becoming strategically valuable. Islands north of Canada and Russia will become crucial for controlling Arctic shipping routes and accessing newly available resources. The US is already positioning to claim or control these islands through diplomatic and military means. Future conflicts over Hans Island, disputed Arctic territories, and newly exposed land will define American imperialism in the coming decades. Why should you know about America's secret islands? Because the pattern is clear. The US claims every piece of land possible, maintains control regardless of cost or ethics, and uses these territories to project military power globally. The islands you can't find on maps represent American empire at its most extensive, controlling vast ocean territories through tiny coral atolls and remote rocks. These secret islands ensure that American military power reaches every corner of the globe, that territorial waters extend American sovereignty over millions of square miles of ocean, and that no potential strategic position is left unclaimed. Understanding these secret islands reveals how empire actually works in the modern world, not through obvious conquest, but through bureaucratic claims, military bases on forgotten territories, and control of places so remote that most citizens don't know they exist. Thank you for watching.